Here's another video for if you just wanted some more notes or whatever about Turbo Mouse. So pre-Turbo Mouse 1, thank you everyone for getting me to 1K. I appreciate it a lot. I'm actually like 1.2. I'm actually like 1.22K or something like that. And with this, it really feels like I'm getting a nice start to being a new reviewer. So originally I did a lot of Battle Cats, and I still intend to do a lot of Battle Cats because that's one, it's easier to make Battle Cats videos, and for two, I still like Battle Cats, and also for three, it's even though those videos get a lot less views, it's probably gonna stay way more consistent. I consistently get at least like usually 5K-ish views on my Battle Cat stuff. Well, on this channel, I mean, this is just my first video. This could all dissipate and I could just completely fall off after all of this, you know. But Battle Cats, I know that I already created myself a little bit of a standing. People know me as the Christian Battle Cats guy. At least that's what I think. So, you know, I'm gonna keep doing Battle Cat stuff. I'm gonna keep making animations on that channel and everything. It doesn't mean that this channel is gonna, you know, go away or anything. I still like making reviews. 2, channel plan, I'm going to be analyzing more niche web series and or web comics, be they good or bad. And then later, once I'm bigger, I'll tackle more mainstream webtoons like Digital Circus, for example. Reasoning for this being that more niche stuff has less people talking about it because it's more niche, which means that it's easier to get videos that pop off, like my Turbo Mouse video, but its potential to like get 1 million views, for example, or even 100,000 views is way lower than something like a Digital Circus. But since it's easier to get, like, for example, the 41-ish K, like I got like 41K views on that Turbo Mouse video in like a week. It's way easier to do something like that, I would say, than Digital Circus, where I'd have to be way luckier, because what's most likely going to happen is that I'm going to do a really deep dive on the show, right, as I usually do, but then I'm going to put like 5K views because I either said nothing original or because there's already 1 million other videos that talked about it and bigger channels already talked about it. When I'm bigger and I cover bigger series, not only do I have a higher chance of more people seeing the videos, but also I'm in a better position to talk about it because a lot more people would want to see my opinion on those kind of shows instead of more niche stuff like Pretty Blood. And what I'm gonna do probably after that, Pork Chop and Flash Screen again. Actually, I don't know if I'm gonna do Pork Chop and Flash Screen. I might do a webcomic like Bittersweet Candy Bowl, something like that. But anyway, about Turbo Mouse, i.e. what you guys clicked on. So 0, there are a few sections that I had ideas for that didn't feel as important as most of the other things in the series to speak on. If you want more criticism for the series, then stick around as I explain both why these are issues and why they weren't big enough to get mentions or their own parts in the original video. So 1, the power scaling, Lugus, whatever, who cares, being bested by Lima, even though he has lightning speed and a cloning ability. So there are really only like 3 instances of bad power scaling. I would say it would be Luke being able to beat Lake, even though Dam wasn't able to. I would say Lungus, as I said, being bested by Lima, even though he has lightning speed and cloning abilities. And I would say it's Lorna not being able to fight off Dam, or her never ever using her extremely powerful jaw biting strength, which is just like bite of 87 levels of insane. Because there are only 3 examples of this, I didn't bring up the bad power scaling, even though power scaling is still important. I mean, for a horror series, like for example, if you could just punch Freddy Fazbear in the face in FNAF 1, it's just way less scary because you actually have a way to fight back against the enemies. And even in stuff like Resident Evil or like Silent Hill, I think you have like a gun or something. You can shoot the horror bad guys, but what makes it scary is both the controls. I know in Silent Hill that you still have tank controls, so it's hard to even do that. The ammo conservation, and also the fact that there are enemies that you just can't kill. Like there are a lot of other factors as to what makes Silent Hill scary, even though you can fight back. And in a horror movie, for example, if the guys can just fight back and sometimes best the villain, but the villain sometimes can best them, then it just becomes confusing. It kind of feels like it's anyone's game at that point. So it becomes less horror and more like action, in my opinion. And I don't think that's what Turbo Mouse is generally going for, so it fails in this department. But it's not that big because there are only like 3 instances of really inconsistent power scaling. So 2, Pretty Blood comparisons, they're pointless. So I watched Pretty Blood. I at least watched the canon parts, like what was it called, Red Snow and Bunchy Prison, and the stuff in between that. And I think it's one of the worst series I've ever watched in my entire life. And I've also watched the stuff before that, like the bloody stuff. It's just a terrible, completely horrible series. And in my personal opinion, it's nothing like Turbo Mouse. They're they're not alike at all. If you really want to push it, you can say the animation style is kind of similar, but Pretty Blood has instances, especially later on, of using frame by frame animation, and the art styles are just completely different. The pacing is also completely different, and the way they tell their stories are also completely different. I mean, the only thing you can really compare is the fact that Pretty Blood has like those boxing videos, but other than that, I really think you guys are really stretching the comparisons. I don't really see it aside from them both being gory and having boxing. I mean, and besides, the comparison is pointless. I was reviewing Terrible Mouse based off of its own merits. And sure, maybe a comparison to Pretty Blood could have been kind of cool if I already knew what it was before I watched Terrible Mouse. And then I watched Pretty Blood too to compare the two, but that again, they're just kind of pointless. I mean, it doesn't really add that much to my review. So 3, more emphasis on this is a fetish show part of the video, and why Terrible Mouse isn't that in my opinion. So if we compare it to Pork Chop and Flat Screen or Pretty Blood, we notice that the reason as to why Terrible Mouse is not a fetish show is due to consistency. Pretty Blood has whole episodes, especially pre-Red Snow, of just characters being tortured by bizarre machines and disgusting things just happen to them. And even in the canon episodes of Pretty Blood, we have just drawn out long torture scenes for no reason at all that don't add anything narratively. So obviously this is just so the author can goon. I mean, there's no real reason to show Rennie like shooting the legs off of like Copper, for example, and also Balloon, and then suffocating them with a bag for a minute straight. We didn't need to see all of that. All we needed to see is Rennie shooting their heads off or something like that. But then we got all of that for basically no reason, even though it was already previously established that Rennie is a freak. And I say Pork Chop and Flat Screen because basically every joke has to deal with wedgies or characters getting kicked in the genitals, and it's been that way for the last 20 years of that show. So 4, clarification on the style of review, constructive criticism. I want the best for all shows and comics I watch or read. Believe it or not, this is all constructive criticism. I don't hate Terrible Mouse, and I don't hate Pretty Blood. I actually hate Pretty Blood. I think Pretty Blood is freaking terrible, but I'm still gonna make a constructive critique of Pretty Blood. I didn't hate Terrible Mouse. I freaking hated Pretty Blood though. I thought that was one of the worst shows I've ever seen in my entire life. You guys saying that Terrible Mouse is like a worse version of Pretty Blood, you guys have some kind of mental disabilities, or you guys are stupid, or you guys are kids. All of you who said Pretty Blood is better than Terrible Mouse, there's something wrong with you, and you need to be admitted in the exact same facility as the guy who made it. By the way, clarification, this is a joke in case you're autistic and couldn't tell. So 5, clarifications on why I compared Terrible Mouse to other shows. I assumed you all were smart enough to understand the point. A few of you were not smart enough to understand why I compared Terrible Mouse to other shows. I compared it for constructive criticism reasons. So when I compare Terrible Mouse to Five Nights at Freddy's, for example, I'm not saying Five Nights at Freddy's is just better than Terrible Mouse, even though it's a game, and also it was made by a guy who made hundreds of other games. It was mostly just to highlight how you could do a specific thing or something like that in a better way than what Terrible Mouse did. That's why I brought up FNAF, for example, and that's also why I brought up a lot of other series. It's just a comparison sort of thing. And also, if you played FNAF, or if you know anything about FNAF, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I still referred to FNAF and also explained what FNAF 1 and FNAF 4 do correct auditorily so that you can understand my point nonetheless. That's why I compared it to other shows, so you can get an idea for how this could have been better. And also, so if the creator of Terrible Mouse watches my video, they can get an idea of, like, they can get a pointer to some inspiration, to something that they can be like, okay, I can take from that, I can take an aspect of this and put it into my story, and take their philosophy and of like sound design, for example. If they want to study the sound design, they can just watch a video about it. I mean, there's already the FNAF 1 sound design video. I think everybody has probably seen that one already. So it was for constructive criticism reasons. I was giving pointers as to how this could have worked better instead of just destroying it, like for example Mr. Enterway back in the day, if you all watched him. 6, clarification on my poor reading skill is not necessary. So I'm pretty freaking bad at reading. I would say that's why I mispronounce things like Lungus. It's actually Lugus, I think, and Gutan is Gutan, like G-U-T-I-A-N. For the longest, I thought it was G-U-I-T-A-N. I commonly misstep words like that all the time, and maybe it's because I read too fast, or maybe it's just because, again, my reading skills are just poor. But it's not really necessary to to get into that or make a little section of that, or like being like, hey, my reading skills are poor, because one, that makes me look like a worse reviewer, because like, what does that actually mean? And two, if I went more in depth on what I mean by that, then that's just a waste of time, because you guys clicked on my video for a Terrible Mouse review, not so I could waste your time. So 7, ESL skills not up to par, mean and not important. Learning another language is extremely difficult. I mean, a lot of people who don't attempt to learn another language don't understand this, but other languages, they have completely different structures of grammar, and some of them have completely different alphabets and ways they speak. Some of them use their hands to speak too, like French, for example. So it's extremely hard to learn another language, because you can't even ask native speakers on like how to speak their language, because us English speakers, we generally don't know all the rules to our grammar, but someone who's coming in to learn English, for example, are going to have to learn all those rules of grammar by themselves. And what that does, ironically, is make some of their speech a little bit unnatural at times. Like I saw this in Pretty Blood, where they use the word cutier when we just say cuter, even though I could understand the misunderstanding as to how words and stuff like that work. I don't know if the creator of Terrible Mouse is learning English, or if they're just using a translator the entire time. I actually can't really tell, but the ESL skills are just good enough to not impede on my enjoyment, or not enjoyment, but my ability to watch Terrible Mouse. I didn't really enjoy this. I didn't really enjoy the series, if you couldn't tell, but the ESL skills were not ever so bad that during a serious scene where they clearly wanted it to be serious, I just laugh out loud hard at the bad English or something. That never happened, and that's why I said it's not important. So 8, a monologue on how it costs nothing to write. This is just obvious. I saw there's not that many people defending Terrible Mouse in my comments, right? But a few people did defend it by saying that, oh wow, basically saying, oh wow, this person not being paid, this indie creator, has bad writing and doesn't have perfect writing. And the fact is that that doesn't really matter. You being paid or not being paid doesn't really matter. We can take One, the object show, for example. The person who made that was not initially paid for creating One, and yet they made an incredibly realistic. They made incredibly realistic characters. They had great mysteries. Their pacing was freaking incredible. The show is freaking incredible, despite the fact that it's a webtoon and they weren't initially paid to create it. This wasn't put on TV or something like that. This is an indie show, and all the money that they got was after they made it. Similar thing with Edgeworld. I mean, it was literally made by some teenagers, some kids, in their own free time in the early 2000s. That was Edgeworld. And yet the writing of both of those shows is solid, despite the fact that they weren't paid. So this obviously proves that writing quality has nothing to do with being paid. 9, backstory analysis on everyone, unnecessary. Majority of it is always retconned and or just not in the show. So a backstory on everyone like Lungus, for example, or Lima's sister, or Lake, we just didn't need that. And honestly, aside from Pukasi, his whole episode is his own backstory, right? But we didn't really need a backstory on everyone else to understand what's going on in the story. I just thought that as an unnecessary, unless it was necessary to point out like a retcon or something, like in Robbie's case. So common comments in my unfiltered reply. 0, I love disagreements in the comments since they force me to think about why I think a certain thing, and sometimes it can lead me to learn that I was wrong. That's why I reply so often, but here are some counters and clarifications for a few comments I saw, though there's not many. 1, Pretty Blood comparisons. Again, they don't matter. Obviously, they don't matter, and quite frankly, I just disagree with them. I think that these shows are just their own bloody cartoony thing. It'll be kind of like saying that Pretty Blood is like an off-brand Happy Tree Friends, when it's obviously just not that, because Pretty Blood kind of looks like Happy Tree Friends. That's honestly holds the exact same weight to me as calling Terrible Mouse a Chinese version of Pretty Blood, for example. I literally saw that as a comment. 2, comments saying that this was a hateful review. It's not. It's constructive criticism. If you want to see a hateful review, watch an early Mr. Enter video, like those Teen Titan Go ones, or like his freaking SpongeBob episode reviews from like 10 years ago. Those are actually hateful reviews.
And tries to hook onto the rock. Then you see him just breathing loudly for way too fucking long. It's another long portion of nothing happening. Hell, waiting had more of a plot than this stupid episode. I mean, there's one part where SpongeBob eats a part of himself and it grows back. That's something, right?
Feeling any better yet?
I will when you tell a fucking story.
3 questions on both the original and the abridged video for more abridged Terrible Mouse. Sorry, but respectfully, there probably won't be any more since I'm a reviewer, and I'd rather my abridged video or possible abridged videos in the future to function as things that prove my points. So initially, I created that abridged version of Terrible Mouse that you guys saw in the video as a thing to prove my point, not necessarily to purely just be funny because I want to be a parody guy. No, I also made that to show that I could be funny, and I wanted to also show off the fact that I can apply my own criticisms to my own work and say like, hey, you know, this would be better if it was this, and then I showed that I can do better. A lot of critics don't really do that at all, and I thought it'd be interesting if I went on ahead and tried. You guys enjoyed it, so I went on ahead and made a full version of the abridged thing, and that abridged thing is gonna basically just be it. Now, let's say in a few months that abridged video just pops off for some reason. I don't know, it gets like 100,000 views, 200,000 views, 300,000 views, something just absolutely astronomically crazy. I will make a sequel if that happens. If that doesn't happen, you're never ever gonna see another Terrible Mouse sequel. Now, it's possible that in the future I will make other abridged things for if I think a show should be a comedy, or if it should be a different, or if it should be a certain thing. But I made that to prove a point and not necessarily just to be funny. And again, I'm a review channel. If I just make like even 2 abridged videos in a row, that would kind of damage who I'm being recommended to. I'd rather that not happen, simply. So 4 minor nitpicks, like that's a side story, not episode 5. You misread or misspelled that name, or nitpicks about a few of my edgier jokes, like the 17 autistic one. None of these nitpicks matter, and they add nothing greater to the greater conversation. Minor nitpicks, like that's a side story, not episode 5. Nobody cares. You can be a nerd about that if you really want to. Or I even saw one where it was like, you're misinformed and you're misinforming people. So I want to go on ahead and say that in a video of this caliber, I'm bound to get at least 1 or 2 things wrong, and it's good that this was a minor thing that I got wrong. And besides, even if this is not technically episode 5, that does not at all change any of my criticisms in the video. Pukasi is still a terrible character. They still use rape extremely inappropriately, and yeah, nothing that I said is just deflected because it's not episode 5 and it's a side story. That it kind of just doesn't mean anything. And if you're saying that because it's like not canon or something, that especially damages the story, because it's like, okay, we're going away just for this odd non-canon moment that technically wastes our time. I don't exactly get it. If that's the angle too, I don't get it. I don't exactly get the angle of trying to correct me on this thing. It just doesn't matter. Or you misread or misspelled that name. Nobody cares because it doesn't change any of my criticisms or anything that I said. Like me saying Lungus instead of Lugus or whatever, or Guaton instead of Guton. Then none of that really matters. Nitpicks about a few of my edgier jokes, like the 17 autistic one. So these were extremely niche issues that I mostly laughed off in the comments. I was mostly laughing at people who thought that, you know, I was super ableist or something for saying only someone 17 autistic would enjoy this. I just said that because it was true, and things that are true are sometimes also funny. Like, here's how a joke works. A joke is funny if it makes sense. The 17 autistic thing made sense. That's why I made that joke, because it's funny. Because a lot of people, only really neurodivergent people, for whatever reason, enjoy Terrible Mouse if they're adults. I've seen this in the comments. Basically, everyone who was an adult and said why they like Terrible Mouse was neurodivergent. That's just a fact. Now, you can call me ableist for saying something that's a fact, but it's still funny. It's still 1, funny, and it's still 2, true. So anyway, final clarifications. 0. While I refuse to write any curse words or slurs in the formal parts of my videos, even as a Christian, I do commonly use them outside of scripts. If that bothers you a lot, definitely leave now, because I only intend to make my non-scripted usage of these words more strategic for Christian reasons, since I've lost that skill. So what do I mean by that last part first? So in Christianity, I personally believe, at least as a Catholic, that you can curse, you just shouldn't do it too much, or like out of anger, for example. Like, because if you have anger in your heart, it's basically, Jesus said that you basically have committed murder on like your brother, basically. That's a really simplified, fast brain way of me explaining it, right? But that's basically what I'm getting at, and I want to get better at cursing. I'm not going to stop. Or like, for example, when I said, a very few amount of you guys were mad at me for saying retard. If you really don't like that word or whatever, then go ahead and leave. But I would really appreciate it if you guys would just not call me ableist or something, Me saying retard doesn't automatically mean I'm ableist, especially since I don't even use that word against autistic people in the first place. I just use that word to refer to something stupid because that's what retard means. It just means something retard just means someone is medically slow, basically. That's basically what the word is. It's not even a slur, it's a medical term. And that's also why I laughed off a lot of people calling it a slur. I thought that was really funny because that means that it's in the same realm as like the N word and like the F slur, you know, words that were actually used for like hundreds of years to put people down. And retard is apparently on that level. Like, you can call retard a strong word, sure, but I wouldn't put it on the level of words that were actually used that were used for hundreds of years to actually damage people. I think that's a bit ridiculous. Plus, how it's used is also different, and why it's an insult is also different. Like, the N-word is an insult because you're calling someone black, basically. And the F slur is an insult or a slur because you're calling someone gay and you're using that as like saying that they're bad because of that. When you say someone is retarded, for example, you're saying that they're stupid, basically. You're not calling them, that doesn't mean they're autistic at all. That doesn't even mean necessarily that they're neurodivergent. So even just the meaning of the words and why their insults are completely different. I really can't take it seriously when the very few of you guys tried to police my language. I just want to point that out because I could see that being a bigger issue in the future. Like, maybe a lot of people start clicking on and stuff like that. One, all of my abridged parodies and videos generally will be as PG as possible during their written sections, while things like my reaction videos won't be. This may be confusing, but this is for many reasons. One reason is because in my reaction videos, that's how I actually speak. And if I decide to stream one day, then if I decide to stream or something one day, and I actively decide to just censor myself on my own platform or something, then eventually I'm gonna have a PewDiePie and a bridge incident where I end up saying retard, for example. And I'd really rather that not happen, you know, Brad taste in music kind of thing, where it's like he was appeasing his fans so much and then he took a photo with Ethan and Hila, for example, right? I know Brad is really controversial, but this is just a good example where he took a photo of Ethan and Hila and then all of his fans got mad at him. He just started saying sorry. I'd really rather that not happen, and I'd rather the people who find that kind of language offensive or not cool or whatever to already not be here. It's partially just to filter you guys out. And also, I'm still learning how to even use these words correctly because I've lost that skill. I used to be able to curse and use these words whenever they felt like they would be the most powerful, but I've lost that skill because I just haven't been actively sharpening it, so I'm still working on that. And I also keep it PG in the more formal parts of my videos because I'd rather be formal in a formal review. I mean, I can pre-write this stuff. With just how I'm speaking, I'm not planning any of this out aside from these few notes. And also, if you don't use any curse words, you just simply sound a bit smarter, and it feels more like you just know what you're talking about. Any adult, I think, would probably agree with this. If you just constantly drop the F word and S word and all these other words in your formal review that you pre-wrote, that clearly shows that you don't know how else to explain what you're trying to do, which makes you come off as less intelligent. So that's pretty much what I have to say on that. Oh yeah, also they're also PG for monetization reasons. I'd rather actually get money off of my videos instead of wasting my time. I mean, guys, I gotta get something out of this, you know. I can't basically just be wasting 3 weeks of my life when I could be just locked in on my comic or making a web series instead, you know. I would really rather get something out of this, and that's completely fair for basically any YouTuber. I think they all want something out of the time that they've spent making videos. I'm here partially for money and partially because I like doing it. 2, thanks again for supporting me, and remember that I live off of shares and suggestions for what to review next. I'm not good at finding new series. I'm just not. Even though I want to do this, I'm not good at finding new series. So if you guys can just leave a lot of suggestions in the comments or my community posts or whatever they may be, that would be great. And again, if I make some kind of edgy joke or something like the 17 autistic thing, that's not a jab at you. Stop being silly. You know, you can go ahead and be mad if you want, but I'd rather you just be mad and leave instead of saying something like I'm ableist or whatever for making a joke about a group of people. I personally just find that annoying and a bit illogical, especially because it's very inconsistent. I mean, I've gotten a few very niche, but I could see this being an issue in the future. That's why I'm talking about it now. But I've gotten a few issues about the autistic comment, but nobody gave me any comments about the furry thing or really the only, like, there are no women who like Dragon Ball Z joke that I made. Only really autistic people, and I really gotta ask, why is it only autistic people that are getting ran for defense so much? I mean, the furry joke, I'm making fun of furries. I could have just said if anyone saw this, they'd get a boner, or I could have just not included the Dragon Ball statement. But whenever it's autistic people, neurodivergent people, I don't exactly understand why is a niche outrage is specifically for this. Why this feels like a weirdly protected little group here. And the inconsistency is what makes me really annoyed. Is what really makes me annoyed. Be mad at all of my edgy jokes instead of just this single one, because it feels like you're being highly specific. It's just kind of annoying. I'm not gonna bend my knees to this, and I am gonna keep joking in the exact same way that I'm gonna do. So that's why I wanted to make this a bit more of a note. So yeah, in the name of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, God bless all of you. Amen. Jesus has risen. Love him forever. Go read the Bible. Lock in spiritually, and go to the gym. I don't know if you need to hear this. Whoever needs to hear this, go to the gym. Lock in right now. Get your health up. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.